Over the past 10 years, my time working in the game industry has shown one true constant, and that is the rise of the Chinese game market, not only as consumers, but as producers of some of the most popular and famous and viral games out there. And I had to think to myself, why is that? Why are they rising so quickly, and what are they doing right? And what can we learn from that? Today, I want you to join me as I, somewhat out of breath, hike up this lovely mountain in southern Quebec and analyze some of the reasons I believe that the Chinese gaming market could teach us North American developers a thing or two about developing games.
China's domestic scale blends global strategy around it. According to Statista, the country has around 650 to 700 million gamers, the largest audience by far in the world. Roughly 70% of the Chinese gaming revenue comes from mobile. This means faster cycles, generally lower costs, and significantly higher margins. In June 2025, 33 Chinese companies ranked in the global top 100 mobile publishers. The reality is, a consumer market of that size bends global strategy. Realistically, if you're a Western game studio, you can't afford to ignore China. Unfortunately, that dependency sometimes nudges creative decisions and, of course, business decisions to think a little bit more globally. So you have all these companies making all this money, and the next logical question is, where does all that capital go? Well, it doesn't just flow back into the domestic market to produce more games, it also flows outward. It quietly buys influence abroad. For example, Tencent owns Riot Games outright. It also has a significant stake in Epic Games. And most recently, it's actually invested around 1.15 billion euros for a 25% stake in a Ubisoft subsidiary, managing Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six, Ubisoft's most profitable subsidiaries. See, minority stakes matter. They're cheaper, quieter, and often come with board seats, data access, and veto power. All of this without the regulatory alarms of a full buyout. The result? Western studios get lifelines for their continuously and increasingly inefficient and over-bloated production cycles, but their risk appetite shifts. Projects tilt towards safe, repetitive, easy to monetize, heavy live ops models instead of new innovation. For a long time in the game industry, there was seemingly an unending amount of frustration with the constant and blatant rip-offs of IP that the Chinese market would produce. That narrative is just no longer true. In fact, there are tons of cultural exports that the Chinese market has produced that's incredible. Think Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. They're not really clones of anything. They're polished, narrative-driven, global hits. According to Mylytics, in 2023, Tencent and MiHoYo each earned over more than $1 billion in overseas revenue. That's a fact that China is now exporting their IP, not just importing Western IP. Another thing to consider is the budgets that are increasing in Chinese production. Games like Black Myth Wukong reportedly cost over 300 million yen, around $40 million US dollars. Compare that to what it would cost to create it if it was built in California or largely any Western country, likely $200 to $400 million. It's not just wages that are cause for this gigantic cost discrepancy either. It also has to do with production process and the ability to validate quickly. These studios are second to none in their ability to quickly kill ideas, move on, and make major efficiency pushes into their production cycles. For a long time, one of the biggest prohibitors was actually the cost of building and maintaining a game engine. Really, that was reserved for exclusively large companies and likely exclusively American and Western companies. With the rise of Unreal Engine and the ubiquitousness of its tool set, of course, that began to change. One of the telltale signs for me is actually a reinvestment from some of the top Chinese publishers into their own proprietary game engines and game technology. This tells me that they are interested in owning the tech stack and the IP. One of the first points to note and question is why this is happening. It is quite a unique situation and a phenomenon, really, with the Chinese market, specifically around entertainment and consumer IP, that has caused this general outflow of capital towards Western companies. To sum it up, effectively, it's extremely risky to actually launch a game in China. I remember working for a publisher who was interested in doing just that, launching in China. And so we had to partner with a local publisher. We had to scrub the game of a lot of seemingly arbitrary content that just did not resonate with the regulators. And effectively, we actually didn't even end up getting the project approved for other reasons. But the amount of hoops we had to jump and time we had to spend placating some of these regulations that really did not have a rhyme or reason. They were just there. A great example is actually the government efforts to curtail gaming addiction by limiting hours. According to Reuters in 2021, minors in China have been restricted to 3 hours of gaming per week. So what do you do if you're a billion-dollar company, you've made a bunch of money on one market, and in an instant that may be taken away from you? To survive, these companies funneled money aggressively overseas and bought minority stakes, made acquisitions to company, and effectively used new growing markets as their safety net. But here's where this unique advantage really bred superpower companies. Effectively, you had the largest gaming market that was entirely isolated from the larger world. Western companies could not expand into the market without the help of a local publisher. And so these publishers and these game companies were effectively getting rich off of their own domestic market while serving as the only gatekeepers to publish all other global games into that market, and taking that money and funneling it to further acquisitions. If I were to highlight a pattern of sorts and categorize them into 4 core pillars that make up the synthesis of this remarkable rise, and to be honest, also a bit of a wake-up call for us, it would be 1, capital control. Anybody that has a market that size demands global leverage, and they take advantage of it. 2, pipeline control. Minority stakes will always steer Western innovation. Onshoring new processes, new technologies through investment is an obvious move that they've been making, and of course it has been working out very well. 3, creative parity. It is no secret that the quality of art, the quality of programming that comes out of these studios is sometimes even ahead of the products that come out of the West. So effectively, Chinese studios now rival Western production quality, but they're half the cost. And I think 4, which can never be underestimated, is the regulatory pressure faced at home, which is quite unique to that existing market. But whenever we have domestic constraints, it's going to funnel innovation, it's going to push expansion, and it's obviously going to export influence that changes a large part of this industry. This isn't just about who sells more games. It's about who controls the operating systems of modern game development. I think China's rise exposes a structural gap. Western studios, we may chase vision, but the Chinese teams are engineering incredible results.
That's my hike done. Just going to sit in the car and have some water and then go home. I just wanted to leave everybody with this. North American game developers, their edge, I think, has always been creative audacity. Testing and bringing to the market new creative ideas that nobody's ever thought about. But I think we can all take a page from the book from these Chinese game studios and how they've been really able to just validate quickly and, have operational discipline. So for me, that's the takeaway from this, is understanding that good ideas are great, but validating and execution is also just as important. And if we can do both, really anybody can have that superpower and have a next hit game.